The air hung thick and heavy, a metallic tang of ozone and aged concrete clinging like a shroud to the oppressive darkness. Deep beneath the city's ceaseless rumble, where even the oldest maps whispered of forgotten passages, a chilling sound sliced through the silence. It was a guttural exhale, too large to be human, too close to be dismissed as the city's groan. Then a harsh flicker, a brief spasm from Michael's headlamp, painted a fleeting tableau of shadows dancing on ancient moisture-streaked walls. For a fraction of a second, an impossible outline resolved itself from the gloom. A towering, shadowy figure, massive and hulking, retreated instantly into the deeper black. The light died then, plunging him into an abyss where only the echo of his own frantic heartbeat offered a rhythm. Michael, a name whispered with a mixture of awe and derision in certain urban exploration circles, was no stranger to such depths. A former subway engineer, his career had taken an abrupt detour after a series of sightings, inexplicable movements in unused tunnels, unusual sounds emanating from sealed-off sections, were consistently dismissed by his pragmatic colleagues. They called it fatigue, imagination, the psychological toll of long hours underground. But Michael knew what he saw, or rather, what he felt. He had always possessed an uncanny sensitivity to presences, a peculiar intuition that hummed beneath his skin whenever something truly out of place was near. Now, divorced from the rigid skepticism of the transit authority, he channeled that drive into a new pursuit: independent research into urban legends, a solo quest for validation. His life was a testament to this obsession. He lived in a small, cramped apartment in a forgotten corner of the city, surrounded by stacks of obscure municipal records, meticulously annotated maps, and an array of specialized equipment. The peeling paint on his walls and the faint scent of mildew were constant companions, reflecting the shadowy world he now inhabited. His peers often spoke of him with a sigh, a man brilliant but misguided, chasing ghosts. Yet Michael found a peculiar freedom in their dismissal. It meant he was unburdened by their expectations, free to follow the whispers of the forgotten. His latest obsession, the one that had led him deep into this suffocating darkness, stemmed from a monumental discovery. Buried within the archives of the city's historical society, almost accidentally misfiled, he had unearthed an old, faded blueprint. It depicted an extensive, subterranean network of tunnels beneath a sprawling metropolis, a labyrinthine system far more expansive than anything public records indicated. These weren't just abandoned subway lines. They were sprawling catacombs, a hidden underworld stretching for miles, connecting areas that should, by all accounts, be impenetrable. The blueprint was a revelation, a missing piece in a puzzle Michael had been assembling for years. For months, he had been collecting anecdotal evidence, whispers from the city's fringes, strange, unidentifiable vocalizations heard near storm drains, massive, unexplained tracks found in secluded urban parks, fleeting glimpses of hulking figures disappearing into the dense foliage bordering forgotten industrial zones. Dismissed by local media and authorities as hoaxes, misidentifications, or the fevered imaginings of the eccentric, these reports had always intrigued Michael. Bigfoot in the city, they'd scoff. But the patterns, the sheer consistency of the accounts, resonated with his own experiences. Now, with the discovery of this hidden underground world, a terrifyingly plausible connection began to form. These forgotten tunnels, he theorized, could be the perfect habitat, an unseen domain for something large, reclusive, and profoundly ancient. It was a hypothesis that, if proven, would shatter conventional understanding and vindicate every dismissed sighting he'd ever had. His professional reputation, whatever remained of it, truly was on the line. This wasn't merely an academic exercise. For Michael, it was personal. He needed to know. He needed to prove it. Before we dive deeper into Michael's perilous journey into the heart of this subterranean mystery, a place where shadows hold secrets and every sound could be a threat, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Ring the notification bell so you don't miss any of our thrilling explorations into the unknown, because what Michael uncovers next will challenge everything you thought you knew about the world beneath our feet. Michael's initial excitement, a heady cocktail of vindication and scientific curiosity, soon began to curdle into a more primal, creeping dread as he meticulously planned his solo expedition. The forgotten blueprint, a faded relic of a bygone era, now lay spread across his cramped apartment floor, a testament to a world unseen and, perhaps, deliberately forgotten. He traced the lines with a gloved finger, mapping out entry points, potential hazards, and the most promising routes toward the rumored deep sections. Each line, each junction, felt like a step into the unknown, a commitment to a journey from which there might be no easy return. His equipment acquisition became an obsession in itself. He wasn't simply packing for an urban exploration. He was preparing for a confrontation with the impossible. High-powered LED lights, capable of piercing the deepest darkness, were essential, along with a top-of-the-line thermal imaging camera. Its sensitive sensors, designed to detect minute heat signatures in the cold, damp depths. A durable, shock-proof camera, mounted on his helmet, would capture every moment, every anomaly, removing any doubt from his eventual findings. Emergency supplies, carefully calculated for extended stays and unforeseen mishaps, filled his specialized backpack. High-energy rations, a water purification system, a comprehensive first aid kit, and even a compact, heavy-duty crowbar, a last resort for jammed doors or unexpected obstacles. The weight of the pack on his shoulders felt less like gear and more like the burden of expectation, both his own and, he unconsciously felt, that of the skeptical world he intended to shock. As he prepared, a growing sense of dread, cold and sharp, intertwined with his excitement. It was the dread of the true unknown, the kind that whispers of things man was not meant to discover. He checked his rebreather, ensuring the oxygen flow was clear, its hum a strange comfort in the silent apartment. The city above him, bustling and oblivious, seemed a universe away from the subterranean world he was about to enter. This wasn't merely an exploration. It was a pilgrimage, a descent into the heart of an urban myth, and he knew, with a certainty that chilled him to the bone, that he would emerge either triumphant or utterly broken. The labyrinthine tunnels themselves proved to be an antagonist more formidable than Michael could have imagined. Descending into the gaping maw of the disused service shaft, secured with ropes and carabiners, the air immediately grew heavy, thick with the scent of damp earth, stagnant water, and something else, something undefinable, ancient. The light from his headlamp, powerful as it was, seemed swallowed by the oppressive darkness, only carving out a small, defiant circle in the vast, echoing void. The concrete walls, once pristine, now wept with condensation, adorned with grotesque mineral formations that looked like fossilized tears. Every sound, every drip of water, every scuttling of unseen creatures was amplified, bouncing off the curved archways and disappearing into the blackness, creating a disorienting symphony of decay. The humidity clung to his skin, a clammy shroud, making every movement feel ponderous and exhausting. He navigated the treacherous pathways, his boots crunching on fallen debris, his eyes constantly scanning the thermal imager strapped to his chest. The silence was punctuated by strange, unidentifiable sounds. Distant scrapes like something impossibly heavy being dragged, echoed from deep within the unseen passages. He paused, holding his breath, listening intently, but the sounds would fade, leaving him alone with the frantic thump of his own heart. Then came the breathing, heavy and rhythmic, a deep exhalation that seemed to vibrate through the very ground beneath his feet. It was too profound, too resonant to be merely wind or settling earth. He dismissed it, tried to rationalize it as the city's distant mechanical respiration, but a primal part of his brain screamed otherwise. And then the growl. Low, guttural, vibrating with an ancient power. It didn't just come from the tunnels. It was the tunnels. A sound emanating from the very stones. A warning, a territorial claim. As he ventured deeper, signs of a presence beyond human began to emerge. Crude markings, etched into the grime of the walls, appeared sporadically. They weren't graffiti. They were symbols. Primitive, yet intentional, depicting abstract shapes, sometimes resembling stick figures, with disproportionately large heads or limbs. In one alcove, he discovered a makeshift shelter, fashioned from discarded tarpaulins and corrugated metal, tucked away from the main thoroughfare. It was small, barely large enough for a large animal to curl up in, and emitted that peculiar, musky odor he'd noticed earlier, now much stronger. It wasn't the smell of a sewer rat, nor a homeless person. It was something wilder, earthier, reminiscent of a forest floor after a rainstorm, mixed with an underlying hint of something carnivorous. Michael documented every single anomaly meticulously. He pressed the record button on his helmet camera, narrating his observations in a hushed, strained voice. He set up motion-activated cameras in strategic locations, hoping to capture whatever moved through this subterranean world. Sound recorders, designed for capturing subtle acoustic data, were placed near the crude markings and the makeshift shelter, their sensitive microphones humming softly in the oppressive silence. He tried to rationalize, to find logical explanations for the growing accumulation of evidence. The scrapes were expansion joints shifting. The breathing was a distant ventilation shaft. The growl was a trick of the acoustics, a peculiar resonance of the vast chambers. But the little voice inside him, the one that had always pushed him to seek the truth beyond accepted narratives, whispered that he was fooling himself. The strange symbols, the musky scent, the deep, resonating sounds, they were all pointing to something far more extraordinary, something that defied easy classification, something that was absolutely real. His unease grew into a gnawing certainty. He was not alone down here. Not at all. The deeper Michael ventured, the more erratic his equipment became. His high-powered tactical flashlight, a beacon against the oppressive darkness, flickered with an unnerving irregularity, momentarily plunging him into inky blackness before sputtering back to life. The thermal imager, usually a reliable window into the unseen world, displayed static and ghost images, its internal battery icon stubbornly refusing to show a full charge despite recent replacement. Even his robust camera, designed for extreme conditions, would inexplicably power down, its digital screen dying in his hands, only to miraculously restart moments later, as if nothing had happened. It was as if the ancient tunnels themselves were actively resisting his intrusion, interfering with the very tools he relied upon for his survival and his quest for truth. He found himself constantly adjusting settings, tapping devices, and muttering exasperated curses under his breath. The intermittent failures weren't just frustrating, they were unnerving, eroding his sense of control in an environment where control was paramount. More unsettling than the equipment failures were the fleeting glimpses of movement he began to catch at the periphery of his vision. Shadows seemed to stretch and shift, taking on brief, amorphous shapes that vanished the instant he turned his head or swung his flashlight beam in their direction. It was never a clear sighting, always just beyond the reach of direct observation, a trick of the light, a figment of his overtaxed imagination, or something else entirely. His heart would pound in his chest with each elusive suggestion of a presence, a primal alarm bell ringing deep within him. Then came the scent. At first it was faint, an acrid, musky odor that pricked at his nostrils, reminiscent of wet dog and damp earth, yet distinctly more pungent, almost animalistic. As he delved further into particularly damp, cavernous sections of the tunnel, the smell intensified, growing thick and heavy in the stagnant air. It was a smell that spoke of wildness, of something untamed and powerful, an odor that conjured images of the deep forest, not the subterranean depths of a major metropolis. He tried to rationalize it as decaying organic matter, perhaps trapped animals, but the sheer pervasiveness and intensity of the scent defied such simple explanations. It seeped into his clothes, clung to his hair, and seemed to permeate the very air he breathed, making his stomach churn with a mixture of revulsion and morbid curiosity. His journey took a perilous turn in a section of brittle, unstable rock. He had been meticulously testing each step, his headlamp casting a narrow circle of light on the crumbling ceiling, when a low rumble shook the very foundations of the tunnel. Dust rained down in clouds, and with a deafening crack, a large section of rock, hundreds of pounds of concrete and earth, tore away from the ceiling directly ahead of him. Michael froze, his breath catching in his throat, then instinctively scrambled backward, pressing himself against the opposite wall as the debris crashed onto the tracks below with immense force, sending shards of rock scattering and a plume of dust billowing towards him. He narrowly avoided being crushed, his heart hammering against his ribs, each beat a frantic drum against the silence that followed. It felt too close, too sudden, almost as if triggered, not a random act of geological decay. The sheer luck of his escape left him trembling, a cold sweat breaking out on his brow. Once the dust settled, he made his way cautiously around the freshly fallen rubble. On the muddy, damp ground immediately beside the rockfall, preserved with startling clarity, were footprints. They were impossibly large, far larger than any human foot, with a distinctly broad, splayed toe pattern. They weren't bear prints, nor were they canine. These were bipedal, terminating clearly in a heel, and sunk deep into the muck, indicating immense weight. They led directly away from the rockfall, deeper into the untouched darkness. Michael knelt, his fingers tracing the outline of one print, his mind reeling. His rational brain, the engineer that had sought logical explanations for everything, struggled to reconcile this undeniable evidence with any known urban fauna. This wasn't a fox, a raccoon, or even a large stray dog. This was something else entirely. The isolation began to weigh heavily on him. The constant tension of the unknown, the flickering lights, the elusive movements, the musky stench, and now the undeniable proof of a massive, non-human presence, all began to fray the edges of his composure. He found himself talking aloud, whispering to himself, rationalizing, questioning, and then dismissing his own doubts. Had he finally cracked? Was this the price of obsession? A descent into madness fueled by the subterranean world? He second-guessed his sanity with every creak and groan of the old infrastructure, every distant echo. Yet, the evidence he was meticulously gathering, the photographs, the audio recordings of guttural growls that defied identification, the undeniable footprints, all were too compelling to ignore. They weren't hallucinations. They were real, tangible proof of something extraordinary. As he moved forward, now acutely aware of his vulnerability, a new sensation began to prickle at the back of his neck. He felt watched, not just occasionally, but constantly. A pervasive, unsettling feeling that eyes, unseen in the gloom, were tracking his every move. The air seemed to thicken around him, charged with an invisible presence. He would spin around suddenly, flashlight beam cutting through the darkness, expecting to catch a glimpse, a shadow, anything. But there was never anything there. Only the oppressive silence, punctuated by the drip of water and the distant hum of the city above, a world away. This constant scrutiny, this unseen surveillance wore him down, making his nerves taut as violin strings. He was no longer just an explorer. He was prey, moving through the territory of something ancient and powerful. The deeper he went, the less he felt like Michael, the urban explorer, and more like an intruder, stumbling blindly into a realm not meant for human eyes, a hidden world guarded by unseen sentinels. The oppressive feeling of being watched intensified, propelling Michael forward with a nervous energy that belied his growing exhaustion. His steps, once tentative, became more deliberate, each one an act of defiance against the unseen eyes. He navigated through a particularly narrow, crumbling passageway, the air growing noticeably warmer and thicker, with that musky, earthy scent he had come to associate with the unknown. Suddenly, the passage opened into a vast, unexpected cavern, a natural pocket carved into the bedrock, far wider and taller than any tunnel he had encountered so far. His powerful headlamp cut through the gloom, revealing a startling sight. This wasn't just another section of disused subway line. This was unmistakably a dwelling. It was crude, yes, but undeniably functional. In the center, a raised platform of packed earth and scavenged fabric served as a makeshift bed, surprisingly neat despite its raw materials. Around it, various objects lay scattered, not haphazardly, but with a sense of order. There were pieces of wood, smoothed and worn, some with edges that suggested deliberate sharpening. Stones, too, some larger than his fist, showed signs of repeated impact, likely used for pounding or grinding. The air, thick with the pervasive musky scent, also carried a fainter metallic tang, like old blood, and something else, something vaguely organic that he couldn't quite place. His flashlight beam swept across the cavern walls, revealing a series of rough carvings. They weren't artistic in the human sense, but powerful and primitive. Lines, circles, and angular shapes were etched into the rock, some filled with a dark, reddish pigment, others left in outline. They seemed to tell a story or convey a message, their meaning lost to Michael, but clearly significant to their maker. Alongside these ancient-looking markings were more recent additions, discarded items from the world above. A rusty traffic cone lay in one corner, its orange fading to a dull brown. A broken piece of a plastic shopping cart wheel, a worn-out car tire, even a tattered, muddy blanket with a faint corporate logo still visible. This was a collection of urban detritus, repurposed and arranged, a stark contrast to the primeval carvings. It was a bizarre blend of civilization's refuse and something anciently wild. As Michael took in the scene, his heart thundered against his ribs. Every hair on his arms stood on end. This was it. This was the den, the lair, of whatever inhabitant roamed these subterranean passages. The absence of movement, the sheer quietness of the space was unnerving. He was standing in a creature's home, and the creature was not present, or at least not visible. The thought sent a shiver down his spine. He raised his camera, documenting every detail, his fingers shaking slightly as he clicked picture after picture, his video recorder running silently. This was irrefutable proof, concrete evidence of an intelligence and presence far beyond urban legend. His gaze fell upon a particular spot near the makeshift bed. There, half hidden beneath a piece of corrugated metal, was the freshly gnawed carcass of a large rat. Its head was missing, and the body cavity was ripped open, exposing skeletal remains. The sight sent a jolt through him. This wasn't some gentle, herbivorous giant. This was a predator, effective and ruthless. The rat carcass confirmed a carnivorous diet, or at least an omnivorous one with a strong preference for meat. The metallic tang in the air suddenly made sense. Michael swallowed hard, the metallic taste of fear now in his own mouth. He was in close proximity to a creature capable of tearing apart prey, and he had no idea of its size, its temperament, or its immediate whereabouts. The realization that he was standing in the very heart of the creature's domain, a place where it rested and fed, amplified the sense of peril. Every shadow seemed to coalesce into a lurking form. Every distant drip of water sounded like an approaching footfall. He scanned the cavern frantically, his thermal imager sweeping through the spaces, but detected no immediate heat signatures beyond his own. Yet, the overwhelming feeling of being watched persisted, an invisible pressure that felt almost physical. He knew he couldn't stay here, not exposed like this. The creature could return at any moment, and Michael, despite his equipment and resolve, knew he would be utterly defenseless. With careful, measured steps, Michael began to retreat, his eyes never leaving the interior of the cavern. He backed away slowly, meticulously, until he reached the mouth of the passage he had come from. He didn't want to leave, not without capturing definitive proof of the creature itself, but he also recognized the immense risk of remaining in such an exposed position. His retreat was tactical, a strategic withdrawal to a safer vantage point, finding a section of the tunnel where he could remain largely out of sight, yet still have a clear view of the cavern entrance. He set up his most advanced camera. It was camouflaged against the dark rock face, its motion sensor armed, and its infrared night vision activated. Beside it, he positioned his thermal imaging device, its glowing screen a silent sentinel in the darkness. His plan was simple, if terrifying: observe. He would wait, hidden in the shadows, for the creature to return. He would capture irrefutable, undeniable proof of its existence, its movements, its raw, untamed life beneath the city. He checked his emergency rations, took a long swig of water, and settled into a crouched position, forcing himself to breathe slowly, to calm his racing heart. The waiting game began, a silent vigil in the deep, echoing darkness. His senses strained for any sign, any sound, any subtle shift in the air that would herald the arrival of the tunnel's true resident. The moment of truth, the climax of his perilous urban exploration, was finally at hand. Michael's heart hammered a frantic rhythm against his ribs as he adjusted the thermal imager, the muted green display flickering into focus. He was hidden behind a cluster of derelict maintenance equipment, the lens of his camera poking through a narrow gap aimed squarely at the cavern's entrance. He had spent hours in this cramped vigil, the air thick with the musky scent that now felt irrevocably linked to this unseen inhabitant. He found himself barely breathing, a silent prayer forming on his lips for clear footage, for irrefutable evidence. Then it happened. A shift in the thermal landscape, a ripple in the otherwise cold, still air. A gargantuan form, radiating heat, solidified on the display. It was enormous, far larger than he had ever imagined, towering over the entrance, its silhouette filling the entire frame. The creature stepped into the den Michael had discovered, its movements fluid and impossibly quiet for something of its immense size. Covered in what appeared to be dark, matted fur, it moved with a primal grace that spoke of untold power and agility. Its head swiveled, scanning the cavern with an almost unsettling deliberateness. Michael instinctively pulled back, pressing himself further into the cold metal of his hiding spot, his breath catching in his throat. Through the camera's lens, he witnessed the creature's eyes glow faintly in the thermal vision, two incandescent points of light that seemed to pierce the darkness. It was a primal terror that seized him, a deep-seated fear that rooted him to the spot. Every instinct screamed at him to flee, to abandon his mission and scramble back to the safety of the surface. Yet, interwoven with this paralyzing fear was an undeniable, almost spiritual sense of awe. He was staring at a living legend, a creature deemed mythical, existing in the forgotten arteries beneath a bustling metropolis. The sheer improbability of it, the impossible reality unfolding before his eyes, transfixed him. The creature's behavior was not what he had expected. It didn't stalk around aggressively or emit blood-curdling roars. Instead, it moved with a quiet purpose. It approached the crude altar of scavenged items. Its massive hand, surprisingly dexterous, picked up a tarnished metallic object, a broken gear from a long-dead machine perhaps. It turned the object over, inspecting it with what seemed like curious interest before placing it back down. Then it ran a clawed finger along the strange carvings on the cavern wall, a peculiar humming sound, almost a low purr, emanating from deep within its chest. This wasn't a mindless beast. There was an undeniable intelligence in its actions. What startled Michael most was the creature's apparent awareness of its surroundings, and perhaps of him. Several times, its glowing thermal eyes seemed to pause, not directly at his hiding spot, but in the general direction of his strategically placed cameras. A subtle tilt of its head, a lingering gaze that felt less like an animalistic stare and more like a deliberate acknowledgement. It wasn't aggressive, but observant, as if it understood the presence of the inanimate eyes watching it. It was a chilling realization. This creature was not simply existing in its hidden realm. It was actively managing its secrecy. Its movements were too calculated, too purposeful, almost blending into the shadows, as if it knew the exact contours of its domain, how to appear and disappear with silent efficiency. Michael felt a profound shift in his understanding. He had come here seeking proof of a monstrous cryptid, a wild, untamed beast. But what he was observing was something far more complex. This creature displayed intelligence, curiosity, perhaps even a sense of territoriality that wasn't born of savage instinct alone, but of a deeper, knowing awareness. The initial fear began to recede, replaced by a growing conflict within him. He had his proof. The high-definition cameras were recording. The thermal imaging was capturing every detail, every nuanced movement of this incredible being. He could emerge from these tunnels with the most sensational discovery of the century, validating his life's work, solidifying his reputation, and shaking the foundations of zoology and anthropology. He could unveil the hidden secret, expose the truth. But as he watched the creature settle down onto its bed of scavenged materials, its massive chest rising and falling in a rhythmic breath, a new dilemma took root. This being, living a solitary, hidden existence beneath the bustling city was not the monster of legend. It was an intelligent, perhaps even sentient, being that had clearly mastered the art of survival and concealment. To expose it to the world would undoubtedly lead to its capture, its study, its exploitation. It would be ripped from its sanctuary, paraded before scientists, perhaps even harmed. The thought sent a jolt of revulsion through him. He had come seeking a monster, but found instead a solitary, dignified dweller of the deep. His initial objective, born of a need for validation and a hint of obsession, now felt shallow and selfish in the face of this profound encounter. The creature had done him no harm, despite its overwhelming size and power. It had shown awareness, not aggression. A new, unexpected conflict arose within Michael. Should he become the one to betray its existence, to shatter its private world for the sake of human knowledge and his own glory? Or should he protect its secret, becoming its unwitting guardian, allowing it to continue its hidden life undisturbed? The weight of this decision pressed down on him, heavier than any rockfall. He had journeyed into the darkness for proof, and now that he possessed it, the true challenge was not in capturing the image, but in deciding its fate. His moral compass spun wildly, caught between scientific revelation and profound ethical responsibility. The cavern's air, once thick with mystery, now felt charged with the immense burden of his choice. Michael had stumbled upon the lair, a cavern transformed into a crude dwelling, filled with the undeniable signs of occupation. He had seen the massive, dark-furred creature through his thermal camera, an intelligent being moving with unexpected grace. He grappled with the ethical dilemma of discovery versus protection, the weight of a secret that could shatter the known world. The creature's presence, its silent awareness of his surveillance, left him frozen between awe and terror. He had proof, undeniable, tangible proof of an urban Sasquatch, but the implications of that proof were far more complex than he had ever imagined. The decision of what to do next, whether to expose or to shield, loomed over him, a monumental burden. Then, without warning, the world dissolved into absolute, suffocating blackness. A sudden violent surge of some unseen electrical force ripped through the cavern, instantly snuffing out every single light source. The powerful headlamp Michael wore, his backup handheld torch, even the small LED indicator on his thermal imager, all died simultaneously, with a soft, final hiss that seemed to reverberate in the sudden, profound silence. It wasn't a gradual dimming. It was an instantaneous, total cessation of light, as if a cosmic switch had been flipped, plunging him into a void more terrifying than anything he had yet experienced. The meticulously planned illumination of his expedition, the very thing that distinguished him from a blind spelunker, had vanished. He was adrift in an ocean of pure, unadulterated dark. Panic, cold and sharp, clawed its way up Michael's throat. His breath hitched, a ragged gasp caught in the oppressive stillness. The comforting hum of his equipment, which had always been a subtle companion in the deep tunnels, ceased entirely. In its place, the echoing sounds of the cavern, previously distant and muted, suddenly amplified, becoming monstrous. Every drip of water from the ceiling now resonated like a drumbeat in the Stygian gloom. Each tiny rustle of debris sounded like a colossal movement. His own frantic heartbeat pounded in his ears, a frantic rhythm against the terrifying silence. The constant, musky scent of the creature, which had been present but manageable before, intensified, becoming an overwhelming, suffocating presence in the pitch-black air. It was everywhere, thick and primal, filling his lungs with every desperate breath. His hands, slick with cold sweat, scrabbled frantically at his belt, searching for the small emergency headlamp he always carried, the last-ditch effort, the tiny beacon of hope. His fingers, numb with shock, fumbled over buckles and straps, the simple act of locating the small device becoming an insurmountable task in the terror-induced blindness. Every second stretched into an eternity. His mind raced, replaying every chilling encounter, every unexplained sound, every fleeting shadow. The creature was here, undeniably. He had seen it, studied it, believed he understood its patterns, but now, stripped of his technology, his sight and his sense of control, he was utterly vulnerable. The vastness of the darkness swallowed him whole, a terrifying, tangible entity pressing in from all sides. Then a new sensation, a shift in the air, incredibly subtle at first, but growing. A warmth, not from his own frantic body, but external, moving closer. It brushed against the back of his neck, a soft, heavy exhalation that ruffled the fine hairs there. He froze, every muscle in his body locking rigid, with an instinctual primal terror. The musky scent, already overwhelming, sharpened, now directly behind him, incredibly close. He couldn't see, couldn't move, couldn't even force a scream past the lump in his throat. His entire being was consumed by the realization that the creature, the massive, intelligent being he had been observing, was now directly behind him, its presence colossal, silent, utterly overwhelming. He could feel the weight of it, the sheer magnitude of its form, without seeing it. Its breath, warm and heavy, ghosted over his ear, a tangible proof of its proximity. He could hear the almost imperceptible displacement of air as it stood there, a towering, unseen sentinel. The rhythmic, deep breathing that he had previously heard through his audio recorders now resonated directly beside him, a low, guttural murmur that vibrated through the very ground beneath his feet. He was trapped, utterly helpless, a small, insignificant human, caught in the territory of a being far beyond his comprehension. The only sound in the universe was his own hammering heart and the slow, deliberate breaths of the creature that shared his immediate, terrifying space. Time ceased to exist, stretched into an unbearable moment of pure, unadulterated fear. He waited, breath held, for the inevitable, the final, crushing action he felt sure would come. Yet nothing happened. Only the warm, steady breathing, a silent, powerful presence. His trembling fingers finally connected with the familiar, textured surface of the small emergency headlamp. With a desperate surge of adrenaline, he clicked the switch. A weak, yellowish beam flickered to life, cutting a hesitant slice through the oppressive, inky blackness. It wasn't the powerful, broad illumination of his primary gear, but it was enough, just barely enough, to tear the veil of absolute night. As the dim light struggled against the overwhelming dark, his eyes, still dilated from the sudden absence of any light, slowly began to adjust. What he saw, or rather, the fleeting glimpse he managed to snatch in that first terrifying moment, arrested his breath and redefined everything he thought he knew. Standing directly before him, not just near, but towering over him, was the creature. Its sheer size was monumental, filling the narrow tunnel section. The weak light caught on its face first, a broad, powerful countenance framed by unruly dark fur that matted in places, revealing glimpses of leathery skin underneath. Its eyes, those eyes he had only seen as thermal imprints or distant glowing reflections from his powerful headlamp, were now visible. They were large, deep-set, and the dim light reflected in them, not with the feral glare of a predator, but with a flicker of something far more complex. He saw curiosity there, a profound, ancient intelligence that seemed to pierce through his own terror. There was no malice, no immediate, aggressive intent in their depths, only a searching, almost contemplative gaze that held him captive. It wasn't a monster in that moment, not in the way his primal instinct screamed it should be. It was something else entirely, something ancient, powerful, and undeniably sentient. The air thrummed with a heavy silence, broken only by his own ragged breathing and the creature's slow, deliberate inhalations. He was profoundly aware of the powerful muscles rippling beneath its thick coat, the immense strength contained within its frame. Yet it remained motionless, observing him with an unnerving stillness. In that vulnerable, exposed instant, a strange, unspoken communication passed between them. It wasn't through words or gestures, but through an exchange of understanding that transcended language. Michael felt a sudden, almost overwhelming connection to this being, this solitary giant that had carved out a secret existence beneath the bustling city. It was a connection born of shared space, of mutual observation, and now of profound, unexpected proximity. He was no longer just the observer, the scientist, but a participant in a moment that felt timeless, primeval. The creature's gaze didn't waver. Its massive head, subtly proportioned, remained fixed on him, its expression unreadable, yet undeniably intelligent. Michael, still frozen in place, found his fear slowly giving way to a different emotion: awe. He recognized the profound isolation of this being, the silent struggle for survival, the quiet intelligence that had allowed it to remain hidden for so long. There was a dignity in its presence, an ancient wisdom etched into its features. He saw a flicker of something akin to sadness in its eyes, perhaps a recognition of its own vulnerability, or perhaps a lament for the world above that would never comprehend its existence. Then, slowly, deliberately, the creature shifted its weight, its enormous hand, covered in thick fur and ending in broad, powerful fingers, lifted with surprising gentleness. It didn't reach for Michael, didn't threaten. Instead, it moved towards the tunnel wall beside them. With an almost imperceptible pressure, it nudged a section of the rock wall. Michael's eyes instinctively followed, his dim light dancing on the crumbling stone. A small cascade of loose debris trickled down, a soft sound in the profound silence. The creature's gaze then returned to Michael, holding his eyes for another long moment, before slowly, powerfully, it turned its head and pointed one massive finger towards the direction Michael had entered the tunnel system. The message was clear, silent, and unequivocal. Leave. It was a warning, not of immediate aggression, but of danger, of an impending threat, perhaps even to itself, if Michael lingered. It was a clear command, delivered with a quiet authority that brooked no argument. There was no growl, no menacing posture, just that simple, direct gesture, and the deep, intelligent eyes that conveyed a profound understanding of their shared situation. The creature was giving him an exit, an opportunity to survive, to respect its domain, to keep it secret. Michael understood. The silent communication had transcended fear, transcended the hunter and prey dynamic, evolving into a mutual respect, a shared secret between two incredibly disparate beings. He realized then that his initial quest for validation, for proof, for exposing this hidden world, had been utterly and completely misguided. The creature wasn't a specimen to be captured or studied. It was a guardian, a silent sentinel of a hidden world, asking only to be left undisturbed. He had to honor that silent plea. The profound, silent moment stretched, an eternity held within the darkness. Michael, still frozen, felt the creature's warm breath on his neck for what seemed like an age, but no attack came. Instead, a new sensation registered, a gentle, almost inquisitive nudge against his shoulder. It wasn't aggressive, not threatening, but a careful, deliberate touch. The sheer unexpectedness of it broke the trance of terror. He finally located the emergency headlamp, his trembling fingers fumbling with the switch. With a soft click, a weak yellowish beam pierced the oppressive blackness, illuminating a small circle on the tunnel floor directly in front of him. He slowly, cautiously, raised the light, his gaze crawling upwards, dread and anticipation warring within him. What he saw was not the monstrous visage he had half expected, born of primal fear and cryptid lore. Looming over him, its massive form barely contained by the narrow beam, was the creature. Its eyes, the same intelligent eyes he had glimpsed through thermal vision, now reflected the dim light with a deep, unsettling intensity. There was no malice, no hunger, only a profound, ancient curiosity. The creature's face, framed by dark, matted fur, was surprisingly expressive, etched with lines that spoke of age and experience. It wasn't a beast, but a sentient being, observing him with an almost sorrowful wisdom. This was the moment of absolute, undeniable truth, the definitive resolution to his years of searching. The fear began to recede, replaced by an overwhelming sense of wonder, a reverence so deep it bordered on the spiritual. The creature didn't move, holding his gaze, a silent dialogue passing between them that transcended words. Michael, still pointing the weak beam, suddenly noticed the creature's massive hand, surprisingly dexterous, reaching out. It didn't reach for him, but for a section of the tunnel wall to their left, a part that looked particularly unstable, riddled with hairline cracks. With a slow, deliberate motion, it nudged the wall, just enough for a few pebbles to dislodge and clatter to the ground, a soft, resonant echo in the sudden quiet. Then its gaze returned to Michael, and the creature slowly, unmistakably, directed its gaze towards the direction from which Michael had entered the cavern. The message was clear, an unspoken command that vibrated in the silent air. Leave. There was no threat in the gesture, no aggression in the eyes, only a firm, undeniable suggestion. A warning, perhaps. This was not its territory to share, not for long, not with the outside world. Shaken to his core, but also profoundly changed, Michael understood. The silence of the creature, its gentle warning, resonated deeper than any shouted command. He had come seeking proof, and he had found it. But the nature of that proof was far more complex than he could have ever imagined. The fear had dissipated, replaced by a sense of immense responsibility and an almost overwhelming reverence for this hidden, ancient being. He lowered his headlamp, the beam now illuminating his immediate path out. He knew he had to go, to respect the creature's silent plea. As he turned to leave, he glanced back one last time. The creature remained, a dark, stoic silhouette against the inky blackness beyond the small circle of light, watching him. He moved carefully, deliberately, the small emergency light his only guide through the labyrinthine tunnels. The primary recording equipment, his high-tech cameras and thermal imagers, lay abandoned in the creature's cavern, the power outage rendering them useless. He decided, in that moment, to leave them behind. A silent offering, a pact, a promise. The creature's existence would remain its secret, and by extension, his. The weight of years of obsession, of seeking validation, lifted from him, replaced by the heavier, yet strangely liberating, burden of guardianship. Emerging from the grimy service entrance hours later, Blinking against the dawn light of the city, Michael was a different man. His clothes were torn, his face smudged with dirt, his body aching, but his spirit was entirely reconfigured. To the authorities who questioned his disheveled state, he calmly reported a complex tunnel collapse and equipment failure, attributing the power outage to unforeseen structural issues in the dilapidated sections he had been exploring. He spoke of near misses with falling debris, of getting temporarily disoriented in the pitch black, but not a single word of the creature. He maintained a stoic, believable facade, his years as a subway engineer, lending credence to his technical explanations. His true findings, the profound, intelligent eyes in the darkness, the silent warning, the raw, ancient sentience, remained locked within him, forever etched into his soul. Michael's life, once driven by the relentless pursuit of proof, transformed. He no longer sought external validation for his urban legends. He lived with the secret, understanding that some mysteries were not meant for public consumption, that certain wonders were best left undisturbed, protected by the veil of myth and shadow. He became, in his quiet way, a guardian of the unseen, an unexpected protector, not of the creature itself, but of its ancient, secluded existence. His obsession hadn't vanished, but matured into a profound respect, a silent reverence for the wild, hidden within the concrete heart of civilization. The city's pulse, once a frantic beat to him, now resonated with a deeper, more ancient rhythm, a constant reminder of the majestic, intelligent being that dwelled beneath its bustling surface, unseen, unheard, and now, thanks to Michael, safe. If this extraordinary journey into hidden wonders and ancient secrets beneath the bustling city captivated your imagination, please give us a thumbs up. And for more tales of the extraordinary, subscribe to our channel and ring that notification bell. Join us next time as we delve into the cryptic whispers surrounding a forgotten, subterranean labyrinth beneath the ruins of an old European castle, where strange symbols and unsettling echoes persist.